Well, good morning and welcome to the Great Transition Senior Living Seminar Series. We're delighted to welcome our online community on Facebook Live. Those of you that are watching on Facebook Live, if you have any questions, you can feel free to drop them in the chat. We will get to those at the end of our presentation today. For those of you that are in the room, we are excited to have you with us. The Great Transition Senior Living Seminar Series was founded back in 2013 by Paul and Lynn Henderson, who are enjoying a well-deserved vacation in Europe right now. I am a little jealous about that, but they're having a really good time. The whole purpose of Great Transitions is to guide seniors and their families as their lifestyle and housing needs change. Now that can be 12 to 18 months, or an event can expedite that process. And that's pretty much what we talk about each and every time we gather. We're here to guide you through the entire process. We genuinely believe that helping and guiding seniors is our greatest responsibility, and it's an honor and privilege to care for those and help those that have helped us for so many years. That's pretty much the Great Transitions way. So our objective here is to educate people about legal, financial, medical, and other general issues and topics of importance. We're not here to try and sell you anything. The educational partners are in this room because they are of like mindset with us on that. We're here to be a source of information for you. Knowledge is power. But we do have a question that we always challenge you with. Who's going to be tasked with making decisions for you when you are no longer able to do so? And will you agree with the decisions that they make? We also want to make sure that you've shared your plan with your trusted advisor or loved ones so that they can carry out those plans. Well, we're going to start tackling the topic of living to 100. Dun, dun, dun. I am super excited about this new series. About, 12 years ago, I read a book that said there are people alive today that will live to be 125 to 150. Sounds kind of scary. And as our nutritionist friend said when she came to Downsizers Club recently, nobody wants to live to 100 if they're not healthy, right? So that's why we're here today. Living healthy involves so many things that we have control over. Diet, exercise, adaptation, positive mindsets. Those are some of the areas that we're going to discuss with you today. Just a reminder, jot down any questions that you have as we're talking. We will have a Q&A at the end. So I'd like to introduce our esteemed panelists to you. To my far right is Declan Williams. He is with Watercrest Winter Park. We're really glad to have you with us today, Declan. He is the Resident Lifestyle Director at Watercrest Winter Park. He holds a bachelor's degree in health administration from the University of Central Florida. Anybody?
Go Knights.
Go Knights. And you're currently pursuing your master's degree there at UCF as well?
I liked it that much.
Okay, good. With a background focused on senior living, Declan is dedicated to enhancing the lives of residents through engaging and purposeful programming. On our recent Whistle Stop tour, we were at Watercrest and got to see Declan firsthand in a class with residents, and that was just really inspiring to see you at work and to see the residents really getting plugged in with everything. So we're glad you're here today.
I'm glad to be here too.
Good. And to my immediate right is Sarah Burke from the Mayflower. Sarah has worked in the senior living, fitness, and wellness industry, you're not going to believe this, for 21 years. I think she was 2 when she started. She's been at the Mayflower as their wellness coordinator for 10 years, teaching, mentoring, and coaching residents into better health on a multifaceted level. Sarah offers programming on various fitness-based classes and wellness programs at the Mayflower, including monthly nutrition workshops, a wellness book club, and health education seminars. She has a multi-degree background in sports medicine and rehabilitation, as well as health promotion, with a minor in gerontology from Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. Sarah designed and implemented both fitness centers at the Mayflower and established the fitness and wellness program from scratch. It's your baby.
It is.
That's awesome. Her greatest occupational joy is connecting with the residents on a deeper and more personal level and helping each resident achieve their greatest health potential through her programming and offerings. So I think you're going to learn a lot today from these two remarkable people. Let's get going. All right, so as we mentioned earlier, people are living much longer now. We've had people that said, I don't really want to come to a seminar about learning to live to be 100. But this really isn't about age. That's just a number, right? It's about living healthy. So let's maybe start with the top 4 things that help us focus on staying on a healthy track. Sarah, you want to kick it off for us?
Sure. Obviously, what I do at the Mayflower is focused around physical activity. So that has to be number 1. Physical movement most days of the week. So important to healthy, active aging. The second one would be whole foods. The more whole foods you can incorporate into your diet, the better. The third thing would be stress reduction. I think stress takes a toll on all of us in various ways, and I think the more we can focus on tackling and managing that stress, the better off we will be long term. And then lastly, just making some form of social connection, having that connection with other people, family members, even a higher calling, a higher being, some type of connection to others is important as we age.
Awesome. Declan, can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. We'll definitely have to agree with Sarah on physical activity. I also would answer mental stimulation. I talked to several of our 99 and 100-year-olds we have at Watercress, and they all agree. Going to trivia or card games or rummy cubes, very popular in our community. All those things they credit to living to 99 and 100. They also often credit social engagement. You don't have a close group of friends, people you trust, people you know will support you when you go through hard times. You really need that, and just to help with your risk of isolation and depression, to have that support with you and your friends are very important. And then what I think is the most important thing is purposeful living. You need to have purpose, you need to have interest. Last night I took the residents on an outing and we actually talked a lot about purpose, and some of our residents struggled. They said, I'm not sure what our purpose is. And as others shared what their purpose is, they realized it's not as difficult to think about as some tend to think. One of our residents said her purpose is going to 3 meals a day to be with her friends. Another resident, I know she takes a lot of interest with cleaning up the lake around our community. We are right next to a lake, a park, and she finds that to be her purpose, and that helps with her mental health and her physical health. So I would say physical, mental, social, and purpose.
I love that, and I love how you highlighted that the residents, the purpose of going to 3 meals a day and interacting with their friends, that was probably not her purpose when she was in her 20s
No.
or 30s or 50s or 60s. And so they have modified that purpose over time, and I think that is great.
And that purpose helps them with the physical and the mental stimulation.
Sure.
Because that's what's encouraging them to come down.
Sure. I don't know if many of you have seen on Netflix, there's a documentary called The Blue Zones. If you haven't seen it, watch it. We're going to figure out a way to watch it, I think, at Downsizers Club, because I think it's so valuable, and purpose is one of the key things that it talks about there. So, Sarah, let's go back. You talked about nutrition, and we all know that nutrition is super important, right? I mean, we try to stay healthy. But is it solely about diet? What all does nutrition encompass? And one of the terms we learned when the nutritionist came to our Downsizers Club was the Standard American Diet. The acronym is SAD. So how do we modify that and keep ourselves healthy?
I do want to make sure that we make a distinction between nutrition and dieting. So they are two totally different things. Having good nutrition is something that we should be focused on more so than dieting and losing weight. The key here, when you're looking at the SAD diet, it is very sad because if you overload your body with carbohydrates, high saturated fat foods, processed foods, and very little vegetables, you're going to feel pretty sad. Because one, you're going to have probably higher body weight, higher body composition, and you're going to not feel as good in general. So what we want to do when we're talking about good nutrition is flipping that standard American diet upside down. And instead of lower fruits and vegetables in our diet, we want to increase and have that. The main bulk of our diet is healthy fruits and vegetables, whole foods. And then with the SAD diet, the standard American diet, it's high fat foods, red meats, things like that. So again, opposite of that would be lean meats, chicken, fish, beans, high protein, low fat. And then of course, heavy in processed foods. A lot of Americans, if you look at the grocery stores, what do we have the most of in our grocery stores? It's a ton of processed foods right there in the middle of the store. The majority of our diets tend to be convenience foods, things that we can open up that are sealed in a package. And I would recommend that we do the exact opposite. The less processed foods, the better off you will be, the happier you will be, and the more fulfilled you will feel through your diet. And that is where I would suggest.
I want to expand on that a little bit. We've heard the term whole foods a lot. We know that's a great little market down the street. But when you say whole foods, like is that a whole bag of potato chips or what? Talk to us about whole foods, because is it more work?
Of course it's going to be more work. Yes, unfortunately it does require more planning and time to prep foods and have things ready and accessible when we're on the go. So prepping our vegetables, washing them, having them ready to grab from the fridge. There is more work involved with that. But whole foods meaning things that, fruits and vegetables, if you think about if I was living on a farm, what would be the things I would naturally consume? So that's what I'm thinking of when I say whole foods. Things that are natural.
So you're not opening a can of soup.
Exactly.
You're making a soup.
Yes, and it's actually not that hard. And I remember as a young mother, I would always make my stepdaughter oatmeal in the morning. And I would do instant oatmeal because it was quick and easy. And I would just throw some water or milk in there and microwave it. And then once I had my son, I was home for a little bit and I had time to put a little bit more energy into the food I was serving my family, and I started making her oatmeal from scratch. And I was thinking, what? Why was I doing instant oatmeal this whole time? It's delicious making homemade oatmeal, and it doesn't take that much more time. So a lot of times we just go for that convenience. And really, one, the quality of the food, the taste, the flavor. Making homemade soups does not take much time. It just takes a little bit of effort and planning. And so if you can put the energy into that, I think you will reap the rewards.
Awesome, thank you. So let's make a switch from the nutrition side to movement, physicality. That was the first thing that you mentioned when we started off with our list. We know that movement is important for muscles and joints and bone health. How much movement should we be aiming for each day? What if we have issues like arthritis or things of that nature? How can I get my movement into the daily activities? So Sarah, if you want to kick that off, and then we'll go to Declan.
Movement every day. Every day. I know you'll hear different suggestions and recommendations from different organizations on a national level. We should be moving every day in one way or another. So there's two main forms of exercise. There's formal exercise, and then there's informal. So formals, you go to a gym, you go with the purpose of exercising, and then you have informal, where you're just doing movement throughout the day, whether it's vacuuming, you're doing chores, you're dusting, you're bending, you're reaching in that way, you're gardening, you're doing things like that. So that's great. All of those movements are important, and we should be getting up and moving every day. In fact, I did hear a stat recently, and I can't say exactly how it was stated, but basically sitting is next to smoking, the worst thing you can do for your health. So we need to be getting up and moving. Thankfully, we have these handy dandy Apple Watches now that give us a little buzz every hour to tell us to get up and move. And we should be doing that. Whether you have an Apple Watch or not, you need to be thinking about every hour getting up and moving around, because sitting is detrimental to your health. But going further into that, one message that I feel is lacking for older adults is the importance of strength training. It is one of the most important things that you can do for your health and for your aging experience, is building muscles. So a lot of people tend to be focused on aerobics, and walking is wonderful. Water exercise, great. Going on the treadmill, fantastic. Love all those things. Those are so important for cardiovascular health. But if you want to talk about successful aging in the most independent way possible, it's through building muscle and strength. When you build muscle, you're protecting your bones, you're protecting your joints, you're also increasing your ability to move with the best form and speed and mobility as possible. And you're also reducing your risk of falling. So the more muscles you have, the better you can move, your risk of falling reduces. And then on top of that, if you were to have, let's say, an incident where you were to fall, the more muscle you have on your body, it's a protective mechanism against your bones and your joints. So it's incredibly important. I recommend strength training twice a week if you can get it in. And it doesn't have to be at a gym. You can get a set of dumbbells at home. There's a lot of things you can use with your own body weight that can help you build strength. And that works even for people with arthritis. There just might be some things that you have to work around, so I definitely recommend, if you have arthritis or you have certain medical conditions, that you talk with your doctor, you work with a personal trainer or a physical therapist to really focus in on the specific needs that you have as an individual. But even with arthritis, strength training and movement is so important. You just may have to modify maybe the range of motion or the time of day you exercise. So if there's a part of the day where you're a little bit more sore or stiff, then you work out maybe later in the day once you get warmed up. RA, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, then you may want to avoid exercise when you're in a flare. But there's lots of ways to work around that. Everyone should be moving no matter what.
Awesome. Talk to us a little bit more about movement, Declan.
Well, I think Sarah answered it very nicely. I wouldn't have too much to add. What I would say is, for me and also our residents, is really the mindset of what we think of when we say physical exercise. I think Sarah touched on this a little bit, but I immediately picture a gym, treadmills, other pieces of equipment that I definitely could not see our residents running on a treadmill per se. So it's about like changing what we think of as a gym and more of like the informal and also formal forms of exercise. I know when, like, say we do strength training at Watercrest, sure, some of our residents do have the dumbbells because that's super important to lift weights. A lot of our residents can't. That's when they might use a can of corn or a water bottle or something that's not as heavy. Some don't even use anything at all, just whatever you can to do the strength exercises. I know one of our residents has a lot of pain in his hands, and he does finger lifts, building strength in his fingers, and it's something that any of us can do. And believe me, you do that for a few minutes, your fingers will get tired. So it is definitely strengthening your muscles there. I know specifically with like muscle pain, joint pain, arthritis, water aerobics is especially important. Being in the water takes the pressure off your joints and allows our residents to be a little bit more active that they might not be able to from the water. One of our residents went from being in a wheelchair to walking right out of our community because he didn't need assisted living anymore, and he was in the water every day. He was attending our water aerobics class, and he would get out and he'd say, "I'm tired, but I'm not hurting."
Good.
So that was a very good way, especially like with the arthritis and whatnot too.
That's great. That's great. We love to hear stories
Yes.
like that. I referenced earlier the Blue Zones show on Netflix, and the Blue Zones, it does say in there that it's called the Blue Zones because the researcher highlighted those areas with a blue highlighter. Pretty scientific, or not really. But one of the things that I noticed when I watched that was the movement came throughout the day with a lot of these people. These are areas where there are more centenarians than any place else on the planet. And these people were working in their garden, they were walking to the market, or doing things with their friends and things of that nature. They also, some of these blue zone areas are in what we would consider third world areas, or certainly different types of cultures than what we experience here in America. And the one thing that was overwhelming to me was this thread of community and the importance of community in each of these environments. So I'd like to talk about the importance of community, maybe how the pandemic changed a community for a lot of people, and what types of things we need to be doing to build community. Declan, you want to kick this one off?
Well, I'll be honest, working in a senior living community, that would be no surprise to me. I think community is what makes the world go round. I think everything we talk about today is better when you are in a community, whether it is a senior living community like where me and Sarah work, or if it's a church community, social group that you're part of, a volunteer group, another community. It's because you get encouragement. It's so easy to walk out of here and say, I'm going to make eating a priority, I'm going to make physical exercise a priority, I'm going to make all of these things a priority, when you don't have a support system that'll help you get to this. Sorry, so you have the social support, including when you go through trauma or loss of independence. That's probably something we see a lot, the grieving process of loss of independence or loss of a loved one. So to have that emotional well-being that comes with being in a group of peers is super important. My dad's a veteran. He instantly connects with other veterans. My family gets so annoyed. We'll be walking around Disney Springs and he'll see a veteran hat and he'll just, walk off. Being with peers of maybe the same era, the same, Vietnam War, just the military in general, things like that, the COVID era. It's nice to be with people who have gone through the same things as you. And back to the whole purpose, it fosters a purpose. As I mentioned earlier, we have a resident who finds purpose in just being with her friends, and you're not going to get that if you're isolating yourself and not, getting that social connection that all of us as humans need. And then most importantly, I think what you get from community too is that access to resources. So what other community you're in, whether it's a senior living community, a 55 plus community, a church group, you have access to maybe more healthcare services. You have access to Sarah at the Mayflower. Healthier food options. Like she was saying, it takes time to prepare meals that are healthy and not just pull out a can of soup. So if you have a community where you might have staff who work to make the meals for you and have those hard healthy options, vegetarian options, anything like that can really help. And then, of course, I can't not mention this as a lifestyle director, but recreational facilities. Just having support groups like we offer Watercrest, having the programming, having social hours, having volunteer groups, arts and crafts, and most importantly, bingo will foster community too as well.
That's awesome. And we can find community in communities, but we can also find it in our geographic community, Crosby Wellness Center, places like that.
Absolutely.
Sarah, can you expand on the importance of community and health?
Absolutely. That's one thing that I'm surrounded by constantly in my work at the Mayflower. It's people gather together and it's beautiful. It's a wonderful thing. And there is not only the opportunity to share and communicate with one another, but you're also reducing stress when you share what's on your mind, what's on your heart, the things that you have going on in your life, when you can connect with people and have that, oh, I'm going through that too, connection with somebody. It's really priceless. And I have a couple stories to share with you. The first one is about an older gentleman that moved into our community, and he was single and he loves sports. He's from Michigan, and I was working with him one-on-one in the gym, and he was telling me about his place on the lake, And I thought, well, that's so cool. And I always tease him because I'm an Ohio State fan, and I'm like, oh, you gotta take that Michigan hat off. It's offensive. And he would just laugh and smile, and we got him settled into his routine. And then I had another gentleman about 3 months later move in, who was also from Michigan, loved Michigan football. And I was training him in the fitness center, and I said, hey, you know, I know another guy who's from Michigan, and he likes to watch football. And it was during the fall season. I said, maybe you want to connect. I'll call him and see if he wants to meet up with you. Sure enough, they were fast friends. They started watching every Michigan game together, and then they got to watch the championship game.
Sorry about that,
Much to
Sarah.
my dismay. But it was so cool because two individuals that would have just sat and watched the game by themselves in their apartments all of a sudden had connection with each other, and they're fast friends, and they check in on each other, they have dinner together. It's really, really rewarding to see that kind of connection happen, just with me and my interaction and seeing people and hearing their interest and being able to help them. The second story I have to share is about a woman who had a husband, and they lived in independent living for a very, very long time. And he started to need more assistance physically and had some decline mentally. And she had taken care of him for a very, very long time. But it came to the point where she decided, I need help. I can't handle this all by myself. And she had just transitioned him into memory care. And I was starting class, and I just love it because it's my favorite thing. I come into class and everyone is talking. I have to wave my hands, I have to holler, guys, we're starting now. I start my music. Half the time they don't even hear me. I just have to start moving, and eventually everyone will sit down and stop talking. That's how amazing social connection is before in our community and before exercise. But this one particular day, I was sitting up on the stage, and I was waiting for the time to start, and I was just observing all the people talking and communicating. And this woman had come into exercise for the first time since this big transition with her husband. And I looked up, and there was 3 of her girlfriends, and they were all in a circle hugging each other. And she was crying, but they were like laughing. And it was just the most beautiful thing to see that. And I thought, that's what this is all about, is community and friendship and support. And when you have those support networks built in through a community, it's incredible to see how they can benefit you when you really need it the most.
That's awesome. I don't know about y'all, but I'm getting excited about living to 100. These stories are great. So we've talked about physical movement, we've talked about nutrition, we've talked about community, genetics. Let's touch on that a little bit because, my, parent had X, Y, and Z, so I'm going to have X, Y, and Z. How much of a role, Sarah, does genetics really play in longevity?
If you go online, you can find some pretty good studies that point to about 40% of our human lifespan related in some way, shape, or form to our genetics. And sure, you could live a perfectly healthy life, and there might be something that happens that's genetically involved that may shorten your lifespan or the things that you have planned out for your retirement age. But I'm a half glass full kind of girl. So yeah, that 40% that you have no control over, but you have 60% that you have a lot of control over. And that 40%, what are you gonna do? The best you can do is live the healthiest and the best way that you can. And so definitely staying focused on the things you do have control over: your movement, your nutrition, stress reduction, and of course, having a healthy environment. And so that's definitely what I would emphasize.
So we're not a victim of our
We're not.
genetics.
No, we are not. There's still a lot of play that we have. And even if we do encounter some of those things that the genetics bring about, the healthier that you are, The better your environment it is, the better food you eat, the more you move, the better your body will be equipped to handle some of those challenges that may come up.
Love that. So let's go back to exercise and activity a little bit. I was on a call this morning. I'm on a call every morning with realtors all over the country, and we were talking about somebody had dropped a question in our Facebook group and was asking for suggestions. How can I make this area of my life better? And everybody was offering all these suggestions, and to every response, this person says, well, I can't do that because, I can't do that because, I can't do that because. And it really just brought all these opportunities to the negative. Declan, let's talk about positivity and how that affects everything that we do in living a healthy life, and how community can aid in all of that positivity as well.
Well, I feel like I spend probably more time as a programming director convincing my residents to come to programs than actually running the programs. There's many times where I'll go through at the end of the day and look at our attendance for programs, and I see a program that maybe has less or sometimes no attendance, and I think, oh, I got to take this off my calendar, it's not successful. But I need to ask why that is, and that's when I find out people are hesitant to come. And there's many things that I find in the course of the day why. Sometimes it is I can't or I don't want to do that. Sometimes it is they hear things and they think it's like different than what it actually is. I've had so many times residents say about like, this is childish, this is something along those lines. And then they come to the program and they're like, I don't know what I was thinking, this is not childish at all. One of our most favorite programs, I would say, is volleyball with balloons. And I get it, when you hear balloons, you think of your 5-year-old's birthday party. I don't necessarily use balloons to decorate, but for exercise, for fun, this program was successful, and you just kind of have to buy them in. So I find myself spending a lot of time trying to find a buy-in for why they can come. Yesterday, I think I mentioned this, I went on a dinner outing. I had to tell a resident I'd buy him a beer to come. So whatever you have to
Wait,
do.
is that helping?
Everything in moderation.
So sometimes it takes a beer to change someone's mindset. So sorry, but I see it a lot too. After a big medical loss, loss of independence, loss of someone, a medical episode, and the positivity really comes into play then more than anything.
Yeah.
We had a resident who was out in the hospital for a few weeks, and I was definitely hearing talk about whether she's even going to come back. She was in a really bad place. She is now back. She had a little bit of a transitional period, but she has adapted to her new health conditions. She's on oxygen now, and that was a big thing for her. If I can still do programming, of course you can. So she's always had a positive mindset, and when I was preparing for this panel, I went and spoke to her, and she connected it to her spirituality, and that's how she keeps such a happy, positive mindset. That's why she can adapt more easier. I mean, we've all, I'm sure, heard the expression that the only constant in life is change, and you just kind of have to accept it. We have another resident who just went through kind of a trauma life experience too, and she has not adapted. She's isolating herself. It's had a big effect on her mental decline, and she's not any less, if anything, this resident's more physical healthy than the other resident, but it's her mindset that's playing the role of why she's not coming to as much programming and why she's not spending as much time with her friends. And I think back to the whole community and back to the social well-being topics we've talked about in the past, have that support group will help you also become more adaptive and more positive, especially since they've all gone through the same things. They can walk you through it, especially something like a loss of a loved one. You're never going to get past it per se. That'll always be with you, but how to adapt and goodbye now that it's occurred.
Yeah, love that. Mindset is huge, and we can affect so much with just having that positive mindset and mind shift. We know that humans are very complex beings, spiritual, mental, emotional, physical. All of these things have this interplay within us. How are you seeing all of those things implemented in different areas in your particular communities as you are assisting seniors with their lives? How are those things come together at the Mayflower, and then we'll talk about Watercrest.
At the Mayflower, we're very intentional about our programming meeting all of those different dimensions because we believe all of those areas and components bring about a healthy human being, healthy and happy. And within my department in wellness, I obviously do programming that focuses on those specific dimensions. So I might have a program where, for example, spiritual, I did a month of mindfulness and meditation. So that during that month, all of the programming was focused on that specific purpose of spending time connecting on a spiritual level to ourselves and to our environment and to higher being, and worked on stress reduction and things like that. And then, of course, through physical exercise and kayak outings that we do and various programs, we tap into some of those other things. My nutrition program obviously is very intentional about the purpose of that programming, but the cool thing also is that a lot of activities have multidimensional benefits without even trying. So for example, just again, an exercise class. You have that physical component, but then you have, as I mentioned before, that social component. You're connecting with your peers around you. And then you may have an emotional connection. When a song is being played, you go, oh, yes. I remember I was on that road trip in college and we played that song, we rocked out to it. I hear that all the time, someone will holler out, I danced that song in 9th grade at the dance with my boyfriend. It's so cool to hear that. So we might have emotional connection to a song that's being played in a fitness class. And then also, I try to incorporate mental stimulation through our exercise classes and through our programming as well. But I find opportunities to introduce that through exercise by talking about what muscles you're benefiting from. Of course, just hearing commands and following those commands is a great mental stimulation. Doing movements that are cross-body are great for mental stimulation. And so even within one program, you can get a multitude of benefits beyond just physical exercise.
Love that. Declan, can you add anything to that?
Absolutely. So I know we always talk about the 4 main components. I know at Watercrest we use actual 7 as defined by the World Health Organization. And I know that always helps me when I'm planning programming because I know I need to meet all 7 of these dimensions. We call them facets every day on our calendars. And this allows me to make sure that we are meeting all the dimensions of wellness. I know we've spoken a lot about physical, and I like Sarah earlier mentioning the formal and informal. We do have residents who will not come to a formal exercise class. No matter how much we try to encourage them, they can't do it. And sometimes it's hard to get past that mindset. So that's when these informal exercise classes come in. You know, the volleyball I mentioned earlier, the balloon tennis, there's the only 2 ways to do it. It's like a sneakier approach to get them to move. And they will play for hours. We'll usually do 45 minutes of it, but after 45 minutes I'm tired and I want to keep going. So finding ways like that. Another one we just started is a drumming circle, and that gets your upper body really moving. That's actually engaged with several of our residents who are in wheelchairs who may not have as much chances to do the lower body, but just focus on the top one. Another one fun we do is conductor size is what it's called. So you conduct to music, and that honestly ties in with mental, spiritual, all of that. Mental, I think the hardest with mental is to make it fun. So we do some of more crossword puzzles, the New York Times games, those are all popular, Wordle, Connections, Spelling Bee on the New York Times website. But then finding more fun ways to tie it in. There is the reminiscing programs, but one our community really likes is called You Be the Judge. I've dressed up as the judge, sometimes with the white wig and the black robes. Love my little gavel. I use that for everything now. It's just a fun way that we explore court cases, and we look at the facts, and we kind of find our own determination, like we're the jury, and then we look at what actually happens. And they're the more fun court cases, sometimes a little inappropriate, which they like. It's a very fun way, and it gets them thinking, it gets them talking, it gets them being social, it's reminiscing about maybe some of the crazy things they've done and was arrested for. But then you have like the more emotional stuff. I kind of tie that in with spiritual a little bit, and we have a facet we call Get Connected. So that'd be like getting connected to the community. So something we've recently started because the residents are interested, it's like a volunteer group. The residents started it, they called it Seniors Who Care. So like starting this Friday, we're doing a Meals on Wheels route. That's something that several of our residents have done in the past. One of our residents even sat on the board of directors for the National Meals on Wheels back in the day. So this is something that combines that purpose and passion with honestly get active, with get spiritual, get connected, all of that. We're also, several of our residents, we actually have a couple who used to work in thrift stores. So now we're going to go right down the road to Mustard Seed starting next month and volunteering with them. They have a lot of different opportunities to volunteer. And again, this combines, like what she was saying, spiritual, get connected, mental, physical. We have our programs tied all with all of that. So I think the hardest part for me is just defining one dimension we meet for each of these programs, because really they meet several.
That's awesome. And I love that you're organizing volunteering opportunities. We probably don't think that an assisted living memory care community would actually be volunteering somewhere else. And I think that is really rich. So given all of that, Declan, let's say our lives are, well, we know that they're probably more sedentary than they should be. What's like one step that we could take to maybe jump into making our life a little less sedentary? Maybe you have more than one step, I don't know, but...
Well, I mean, the quickest thing to say is just stand more. I know you talked about this with your Apple Watch. I have residents who will stand up in the middle of bingo because their Apple Watch tells them to. And it's like, your daughter's told me that you never listen to her, but you're listening to that Apple Watch more than she does. Any kind of ways to stand more. I know a lot of us probably don't have Apple Watches, but standing up there in TV commercials, making sure that after lunch you go take a walk afterwards. I think the most important thing with being less sedentary is just making your environment more movement ready and making your routine, emphasize routine more. I mean, if we think about how our houses are arranged, it's about sitting. Like we have our living room, we have our dining room, everything's about where we sit. If we do more purposeful things like making the TV remote on the other side of the room, so when you're watching Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune comes on, I hate Wheel of Fortune, so I quickly have to go change the channel. It makes you go stand up to get up and get the remote.
Some of us remember actually having to stand up, go outside and take a pipe wrench and turn the antenna so we could get the other station.
And I think just finding activities that bring you joy is what's really important. One of our residents I mentioned earlier is a very environmentalist. She finds joy going out feeding the animals, and she finds joy cleaning up because there's too much litter in this world. So she finds her way of movement by going out to do exercise or to do what I just said. It's just you don't want it to feel like a chore. If it's something you dread every day, you're not going to do it, let's be honest. So finding activities that bring you joy, that involve movement, dancing, gardening, playing with your pet, playing with your favorite grandkid, whatever it needs to be, it just needs to be enjoyable and sustainable.
Don't want to play with your non-favorite grandchild.
Of course there is. It's not enjoyable.
All right, so let's kind of put a bow on this because I want to be able to energetically blow out the candles on my 100th birthday cake. Help us to lay out some priorities that we need to walk out of the room with, and once we do that, then we'll open it up for some Q&A. Sarah?
My take-home message at the end of the day is find things that bring joy to your life. And so if that requires you to make a quick list and then try to be more intentional about bringing those things that bring you joy into your life on a daily basis. So whether that's sitting in your chair and working on a craft or reading your favorite book, make sure to do that. Spending time with the people that you love that bring you joy, I definitely encourage you to do that. Find ways to put joy into your life every day. And I'm fortunate enough through my job, I try to be a little spot of joy in people's lives when they come to exercise and they come to my wellness programming, and I know for sure they are that for me.
Awesome. Declan?
Well, I know we talked a lot today, healthy eating, exercise, stress management, purposeful living. These are all good takeaways. I think the biggest takeaway is just make living a priority. I mean, we can eat healthy, we can exercise, we can manage our stress, but at the end of the day, we get to decide what's our priority, and our priority should always be ourselves. So if you choose to live purposely, you make every day count, that'll get you to a long and healthy life.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You guys brought us a lot of great content, and I'm sure we have a few questions. Can I get a couple of the educational partners to come up with the microphones? For those of you that are new, if you have a question, you can raise your hand, and our educational partners will come to you with the microphone because we want to make sure that we're capturing everything. I'm going to ask you gents to stand up here so you can see the hands as I see them. Anybody have a question? All right, Elaine, right over here in the front row.
Ask the first question.
You do.
All right, so I have a question about food. And I have always heard at both of your facilities that you guys have great food, restaurant style. And so my question is, how does this concept of whole healthy foods make it into the menus and the food that's served at your facilities?
That's a great question. Let's talk about how what Whole Foods looks like at the Mayflower and at Watercrest.
Want me to take it?
Sure.
Okay. Yes, we do have like a restaurant style dining at the Mayflower, and we have wonderful talented chefs that try to include fresh ingredients into their menu items. And we are always open and listening to suggestions from the residents and trying to accommodate certain dietary needs or restrictions. And I would say that as a whole, the Mayflower is open and promoting of healthy nutrition. Of course, they have to reach everybody. It's hard to please hundreds of people all at the same time. So that's an ebb and flow of our dining, because there's people who want no salt and people who want salt. And so then where do you find that happy medium? But our dining director is very open and wants to try to please as many people as possible. But we're definitely, there's healthy options on our menu. You can make modifications as needed. If you want extra vegetables and no starch, you can do that. And you can order things on the side as you like as well.
Awesome. Declan?
I think again it comes down to being purposeful. So like Watercrest, one of our main food vendors is US Foods, and they make it possible that you can purposely purchase locally grown foods. Of course, some food items, fruits and veggies aren't found in Florida, so they get them from local farms, not in a can. So that's like the big thing, not in a can. So I'm not as knowledgeable, of course, about our dining room services, but I know our chef does purposely try to include like seasonal fruits. So like right now, I guess it would be strawberries and blueberries. We see a lot of that in our menus. Even our company, Watercrest itself, our menus specifically label like heart healthy foods and things like that. So I think just being purposeful and keeping in mind heart healthiness, fresh fruit and vegetables, that sort of thing.
And I think when we were on our whistle stop tours recently, we had someone who was vegan who needed some modifications on the food that was there, and it was so easy. No problem, we'll get that right out for you. And the kitchen prepared something that was perfect and very tasty, as I understand it. So, right here, we got one in the front. Frank?
Good morning. Question on working out. How do you determine how much hard cardio versus walking versus weightlifting in a weekly schedule?
Sarah, this sounds like a question for you. How do we figure out our fitness routine?
It's completely individualized. So it's hard for me to answer that as a general response because it really does depend on each individual, what your goals are, what your current activity level is. So for you, your recommendation would be different than a recommendation for myself or for Joanne. So it's really hard to say. Like I said, movement most days. I definitely try to encourage my residents to get some form of cardio on most days of the week. And then definitely as a minimum, resistance training 2 times a week. But I have found personally, through my own experience, when you start getting into a routine, you want to do it more. So 2 to 3 days. But I try to start with small attainable goals with my group. And so I feel like if you can build on positive experiences, you want to do it more because you start to feel better and then you just naturally want to do it more. So I try to always keep people's goals small and attainable, and then we can build on that. But Frank, you are so active as it is, so we can definitely talk afterwards and talk about personal goals that you might have.
Awesome. Great question. Lisa?
Yes.
Awesome.
So two questions. One is, do you have multiple people on staff for all of your programming, or you do most of it just yourself? And how do you come up with a variety of ideas for your programming? Do you ask the residents? Is there a certain place where you go on a website to find variety?
Those are great questions. So let's talk, Declan, why don't you start at your community, what that looks like, and then Sarah?
Absolutely. So like programming department for our community would look like me as the director, and then on either side we have about 60 residents on assisted living and 30 on Market Street. That's our memory care. We have a programming specialist 7 days a week dedicated to both sides. So both sides look a little different. Assisted living, since they are a little bit more independent, or they're a good amount more independent, you know, they come to programming, they follow the lead of the programming specialist. If it's a bigger event, you know, I'm there too. Market Street, you know, we have the care staff who kind of chip in and help too, getting them to programming and whatnot. We actually get higher percentage of participation from our Market Street because of that. The way it's designed is they come to the common areas where the programming is happening. They don't spend as much time in their rooms. So that's kind of like what the staffing there looks like. When it comes to like the variety, it's definitely about resident input. I do a meeting every month where we review the next month's calendar and then also get input about what they want to see and do. We use a system called Sagely where we track attendance at every program, and that'll also allow me to see what programs are getting good attendance, what programs aren't getting good attendance. But I will say attendance, not everything. Of course, bingo, we can always get like 20, 25, 30 people at. I mean, we've had to get like more tables just to have room for everyone for bingo. Then we have the programs like maybe arts and craft that we get 6 people for. 6 is not a bad attendance. It's just about having like different variety of programming, large groups, small groups, more intimate one-on-ones and ones-on-one threes and whatnot. So getting input from them is important. There's also a lot of resources out there for lifestyle directors. Activity Connection is a monthly subscription we have that provides input. The calendar gives me a lot of input because there's a theme day for everything. National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day, National Red Nose Day. Like, it like gives it to you. So there is a lot of resources out there as well for programming departments. I've actually gotten a lot of ideas from Facebook and TikTok, of all things. So yeah, a lot of ideas from TikTok, especially arts and crafts, surprisingly. But Facebook too. There's whole communities of programming directors and staff who all we do is share ideas, share our calendars, that sort of thing. It's a very supportive community.
What does that look like at Mayflower?
Well, first, I'm the only one who runs the programming, so yes, I'm very busy between 18 classes a week, 2 fitness centers, a massage program, personal training, one-on-one, things like that, and then doing specialty programming. It is very busy. Maybe eventually we will expand our department, but for right now, I'm the one person that's running that. And then as far as ideas, kind of like Declan, I go based on theme months typically, just because my special programming is not as heavy because my bulk is classes. But even in terms of new classes, I love going to different conferences. So the International Council on Active Aging is one that I've attended for the last 20 years on most years. Even during COVID, they had virtual conferences, so I still was able to share ideas with people in the field that do the same position, and so I usually walk away from those conferences with at least one new class idea, and I bring it to the residents, and usually it works and it's a hit, and if it's not, then we move on to something else. But I love having that as an opportunity to get new ideas, and then theme months, especially with like nutrition. But mostly I just try to think of things that I enjoy, and then I just adapt it and bring it to our residents. So for example, I love playing cornhole when we're hanging out on the weekends and watching games, and so I brought cornhole to the Mayflower. So we now have cornhole gatherings every other month. I have beer, I have chips and guac, I have all like the tailgating type of foods, and then we started an annual resident versus staff cornhole tournament, and it's become quite the event. And now the residents, that's what started the monthly thing, because residents were like, we need to practice. But the residents actually they won the contest.
Legit, fair and square.
Legit. And we have some incredible natural talent in cornhole and kayaking, and I've taken them on juice tastings, which I love organic, fresh pressed juice. I would take them to my juice place, and they got to have a sampling of juices. And so I just try to think of things that I enjoy, and I just bring that to them.
Love that. That's great. Do we have any other questions? Oh, towards the back there.
Hi. One thing that you didn't mention that I've always thought was important for seniors, because I know some people that are actually over 100, and in talking with them, sleep seems to be an important thing as you age. Most of them take naps, so what is the importance of living to be 100 and sleep?
That's a great question. How does sleep play into all of this?
Oh my goodness. Well, that's something I'm the least experienced in.
We might have to have another seminar on this.
I think that's a good idea, actually. But they do say that sleep is so important to the body. It's the time when your body and your tissues heal, and it's a regenerative process. And so not only do our minds need it, but our bodies, our tissues need that rest. And it's something that I do see a lot of older adults struggling with. The ability to fall asleep, and then it creates this unhealthy cycle where they can't fall asleep, and then they stay up too late, and then they wake up and they're tired, and then they nap in the middle of the day, and then they're not tired at night, and it becomes a cycle. So I do try to stress, even now we have this technology at our hands, and so they talk about blue lights and technology and the way that it stimulates our brain, being on social media and things like that, how that can disrupt our ability to sleep well. So I do try to, when I have conversations with people about encouraging them not to be on technology right before bed, to have an hour of reading or just slow down time to help with their sleep. But I don't know a lot about the correlation as far as, because I'm not a research person, but I think it's a great idea to do a deeper dive into that.
We'll have to do some follow-up. Do you have anything to add?
I don't really have anything to add except just prioritizing it. What we see too is people skipping meals just like that. You don't want to skip sleep either. Then you also have the residents who all they do is sleep. So it's like kind of finding a middle ground there.
Right. Again, customize something for you based on your needs. That's a great question and something to definitely think about. All right. Well, with that being said, I think Declan and Sarah are going to stick around for a few more minutes. So if you had any extra questions, you can certainly come up and chat with them. We always ask you, did we try and sell you anything? No. Okay. Good. And we have a challenge. What are you going to do with what you learned today? How are you going to put some of this into play? Become more intentional, whether it's nutrition or physical movement, or finding community. Those are hard things sometimes. And so I'm going to challenge you. I have to work on community in my own life. So that's my thing, and I'm putting it out there so I can be accountable to you guys. I'll let you know. Now, you're our connection to the world. I appreciate those of you that have brought friends with you. Don't forget your survey sheets. We are going to tackle you before you get outside, so you make sure you turn those in. Just kidding. Our next seminar is May 15th. We're going to continue on this Thriving to 100 series with driving after 80. This is going to be a really good one. So I encourage you to go ahead. You can get pre-registered for that seminar on the bottom of the feedback survey sheet. Please be sure to put your name on it. Phone number and email is helpful as well. Also in the survey, our Avoiding Caregiver Burnout Workshop next Monday. That is going to be at Watercrest. We have, Susan Stern, who is a coach for caregivers. She's remarkable. She has got a great story and has helped a lot of people. So if you are a caregiver or you know someone who is, we would love to have you join us at that workshop. We always have a closing quote, and I think this one is very fitting because it comes from Mr. George Burns. You remember he lived to be 100. He said, if you ask what is the single most important key to longevity, I would have to say it is avoiding worry, stress, and tension. And if you didn't ask me, I'd still have to say it. So there you go. Hope you have a great day. We look forward to seeing you at the next seminar.